This is Jack Ashton Booth. I work for the RSPB investigations team, and this is me here with a young pallid harrier. I'm here today to talk to you about hen harrier identification and a bit about Raptor ID that may help you, observe and enjoy this species. So part of my investigations role is monitoring hen harriers, and I have the brilliant job of monitoring the hen harrier hotline. So I see fantastic sightings coming in from all of you guys, whether you see the species mentioned on your dog walks, when you're hiking, when you're cycling, and I get to go through those and basically see if any match up with our records or are in areas of favourable habitat in the breeding season. So if the sightings look, really good, I'll head out to a vantage point and I'll monitor the landscape. I'll look for displaying males doing their magical sky dance and quartering females, or females doing the sky dance, which they equally do when they found an area that they're happy with. So I'll spend a bit of time in those areas and basically monitor what's going on, see if the birds are cavorting nicely, prospecting, carrying nesting material, showing all the good signs that they are going to nest in England. Unlike the male, who is very diagnostic in his appearance, beautiful hooded grey bird, very ghostly with his white underside. Again, bright yellow iris, bright yellow feet, talons and lower tarsus. Lovely black trailing edge, very similar to the female, but stands out a lot more against the sort of white ghost ventral side of the male. And then the diagnostic black hands. And here we go, next generation of hen harrier. So these are hen harrier chicks, absolutely gorgeous little bundles of fluff. So as we saw on the previous slide, the male and the female, once they're happy with the area they've selected to nest, be it upland heather, be it soft rush in an upland valley, once the male has sired or fertilized the eggs, the female will then lay. So she'll lay 4 to 7 beautiful white eggs. So she will, an average clutch size is around 4 to 5 eggs usual, but I have seen a beautiful brood of 7 myself. So she'll incubate them for around a month, and then they'll start to hatch. So as they're laid, they will also hatch at the same pattern they've been laid. So it's usually 2 days between hatching. So you can see here there's a 2-day-old chick, 4-day-old chick, a 6-day-old chick, and an 8-day-old chick just in the foreground, just by the egg there. And basically she'll brood those and be dependent on the male, who will bring small mammals, small passerines into her for about the first 2 weeks. When they get a bit more, dependent in the nest, less dependent on the female, she'll start to range. So around 14 days, she'll start to range and provision herself. So she might drop a sneaky snack in for the chicks, but also the male will still come in and do his classic sky dance, and they'll feed them that way. So we go into the nest to make sure they're doing okay, and then ring the chicks around 21 days old. You can see a ring's being applied here to the right tarsus on one of the small chicks under license. And then what we started to do, because we're trying to understand because it's such a small population in England, and just to see how they interact with the Welsh population, the Scottish population. We've also applied colour rings, which gives an alphanumeric code to that bird that can be spotted, especially in the age of digital photography, by yourselves. So if you see any of these rings, please report them to us via the hen harrier hotline, or to myself, or to my team. Also, just be aware that they're on there and tell your friends, because it should be really valuable data to us. If we can sort of pinpoint where these birds have come from, what populations they're stemming from, how long they've lived, where they've been, where they're going. So it's invaluable to our work to carry on protecting the species. And also in terms of colour ringing, we also tag, as you'll be well aware, we satellite tag these birds to give us a more accurate idea of what they're doing and to highlight where they're nesting, so we can protect this. this bird. So this is a second calendar year female. So this is her first year of breeding. And you can see the satellite tag there on her mantle. So at this point, I thought I'd take a bit of time to sort of illustrate the species in a bit more depth. I mean, a lot of us will be well versed with hen harrier chicks in terms of how many they have just from previous hen harrier days, where they nest, how they do it, the sky dance. But if we talk a bit more about the minutiae, I try and keep it simple for identification purposes. So if you think of a hen harrier as having a hand, it's the easiest way of doing it. So when you count the primaries, which most of the species of raptor or accipiters have 10, essentially they have the outermost, which is 10, and then you count inwards. So this is called descendant counting. So you're counting away from the body. So the innermost primary is number 1, the outermost primary is number 10. So you can see P6, which is primary 6, which is the innermost longest primary, if that makes sense, which gives it the 5 fingers, is the one we need to concentrate on, because this is what gives hen harrier their diagnostic hand, a much broader hand, because of that extra primary that protrudes from the trailing edge. Whereas in the other species, the pallid harrier, which you saw me at the start, that P6 tends to be smaller, and in keeping with number 5, which you can see on the illustration there, which gives it that smaller, pointier wing. So this is something you just need to be aware of when, I mean, if you're in that position where you're lucky enough to, see a Montagu's harrier or pallid harrier, fantastic, report that to us as well. But yeah, hen harriers in essence have a larger hand, a broader hand, because of that primary 6. So just to simplify, here's an exploded view of the same point. So you can see there, 10's the smallest outermost, and then as you count in, the numbers decrease. So you've got 10, 9, 8, 7, and 6. So the wing point's number 7, and the 5 fingers are basically occur because of P6 sticking out the trailing edge. So at about 30 to 31 days old, males tend to be ready to leave the nest. Females are a bit later. Males in most raptor species tend to leave the nest first, smaller, and they can just get out, basically. That's part of the biology of this species. The females take a little longer to get out. So this is a young male. So there's a few things you see. I'm in such a privileged position, and I absolutely love it when I visit the nests under license, to look at these birds in detail. So this is a young male. Interestingly, in the hand next to one another, the young males have a brighter cere, which is the bare skin above the culmen, which is the cutting edge of the bill, and the gape flange, which is just like the gape of your mouth, your lips, a little brighter yellow and orange in young males. And you can see, because it's a young bird, you can just see a sort of ghosting in the iris. So this pale iris is quite distinctive in young males, whereas females have a darker eye, which you'll see. Males are much smaller bird, more defined, more sort of attenuate. They're just much more sleeker in the hand. Their tarsus, their legs essentially, are brighter yellow and smaller. They've got a thinner leg. So this is a male's tail. They tend to be more contrasted in the tail. So for those who aren't aware, ringtails they get their name basically from these bands that traverse the tail. And you can see the beautiful white diagnostic rump there, which is quite, well, diagnostic of most of the harrier species, but hen harriers, as we know. So you can see the paler bands are much more contrasting here against the dark bands in male, and there tends to be a bit more grey wash to those pale bands in the young males. So this is a young male once it's fledged the nest. You can see a paler bird below. They tend to be more sort of, they have sort of more fine streaks, if this makes it's quite hard to sort of get across until you see the female. But they're greater underwing coverts, which is basically the contour feathers that protect the secondaries. They tend to be more contrasting, they tend to be more speckled and more uniform in female. And the base of the hand in the primaries, they tend to be less traversely barred or coarsely barred. You see that paler area at the base of that hand we were talking about, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. That sort of area tends to be more pale in the window, and you can see the bird against the blue sky there because basically those bands have even broken up, almost more similar to pallid harrier, whereby they just have small dots. It's more fragmented. There'll be a smaller bird. They look almost like a swollen sparrowhawk at this stage. That pale iris is really obvious. If we move on to females, you can see altogether a stockier bird in the hand, larger legs, more of a washed out straw-like yellow rather than the brighter yellow in the males. The face is much more concolorous, it's less polarized. The iris is darker. The bill and the skull is a lot heavier. You can see that in the female compared to that male. If we look at closer at the tail looks larger, and the bands or the rings are much broader, and that paler bands, which sit against those dark bars, are much more buff in coloration and less contrasting.